Over the last few months, I've been having more and more requests from people to do a video about GLP-1s, your Ozempics, Mounjarp, Wegovy, and how it relates to the kind of eating problems that I talk about here on my channel. Firstly, I think the algorithm is going to hate this video, and so I'm going to use maybe slightly strange language to try not to upset it too much. The editing might be a bit clunky as well, because I might need to edit out some coughing fits because I'm just recovering from being sick, so bear with me. In this video, I just want to talk about what it is that we know so far about out-of-control eating and these medications from a research perspective. What am I seeing in my practice? Because I would now say maybe 1 in 4 people who contact me and who I work with are taking these GLP-1 medications. So I want to share some of the things that I'm starting to learn about how these are affecting people who have a very difficult relationship with food already. And then I want to share some thoughts and a question that I want you to consider for yourself. If this is something you are considering taking, and if you are somebody who has a difficult relationship with food, has experienced bouts of out-of-control eating, and maybe you're feeling like these medications are like your last shot at finding a way to finally recover. So firstly, what do we actually know? Okay, there have only been a couple of small studies about GLP-1s and people who have bouts of uncontrollable eating. We don't have a study that is longer than 6 months. And these studies, there hasn't been any placebo trials either. And the placebo effect, how you believe whether something is going to help or not, does have a big impact. Now, I'm not saying that the results of this research is all placebo, but I'm saying they haven't mitigated for the placebo effect. And what they've measured in these trials is the frequency of their out-of-control eating episodes and weight loss. And they have found that people taking GLP-1s have reduced bouts of out-of-control eating and their weight reduces. Now, this sounds like the desirable outcome, right? Having fewer bouts of uncontrollable eating. And for many people who struggle with this, they're also interested in weight loss as well. But here are the biggest limitations. So 1, there's no follow-up. So we don't know 3 months, 6 months, a year later, whether these people are doing any better, whether they're doing the same, or whether they're doing even worse after stopping the medication. We also know that these kinds of challenges with food are not just behavior-based. There is a whole emotional and psychological element to that, and there's been no psychological profiling, screening, measurements. A big part of having eating issues is the guilt, the distress, the shame, the obsession, the food noise, all of that. None of that is being factored into account here. So we don't know whether any changes in behavior have made any positive changes in somebody's psychology. There's also been no experimentation with different dosages. So what would be the best dose for somebody who was using this medication to help manage their out-of-control eating? So of course, what we need are much longer trials. We need follow-ups. We need psychological assessment, all of these things, which is very, very expensive. And it's not in the pharmaceutical industry's interests to be spending that kind of money on that kind of research. They're better off spending the money on just trying to show that the medication is safe, or safe enough when balanced out with the potential benefits. What we really need is public health to fund this kind of research, but eating problems are just not going to be a priority when they're being compared to something like cancer or diabetes or heart disease. Rightly or wrongly, that's the reality of it, so we are unlikely to get any decent research data on this anytime soon. As a psychotherapist who helps people with their food issues, I'm seeing more and more people coming to me who are on these medications and still feel like they need help. So I'm looking for themes and patterns to try to understand where could these medications potentially be helpful in this area, who are they going to help, and potentially who might they harm. So a couple of things that I'm starting to notice is 1, there are people who come to me who are in conflict still. So it kind of creates, for many people, these medications create this sense of, in the body, a very physical, like, ugh, I can't eat any more food, I don't want any more food. And that's a very physical, like, ugh. And someone can experience this sense of physically not wanting and still mentally and emotionally be craving it. And so they're in this conflict, this kind of dissonance, which is quite uncomfortable. I'm not seeing a huge amount of distress around this conflict, but I'm seeing a lot of confusion. People are confused because one part of them is saying one thing, one part of them saying another thing, and they're not quite sure how to reconcile the two. Also, many people who end up with out of control eating, not everybody, but quite a lot of them, get there because they were once, or still are, in a restrictive mindset around food. So when their eating behaviors are being curbed by this medication, that restrictive voice, that restrictive mindset is gaining momentum, because for many people it didn't even go anywhere. Their mindset was still very restrictive, even though their behavior might have looked very permissive around food. So this leads to a different kind of obsession, a different kind of challenge, where I'm seeing people sometimes trying to get away with eating as little as possible, which is risky. It's risky physiologically to not give your body the nutrition that it needs. And then that affects your psychology, because when your brain is starved of nutrients, your thinking becomes more fixed and inflexible. It's one of the reasons why restrictive eating problems are so challenging to recover from. They can also be very sneaky in their onset, because the restrictive voice just sounds like doing the right thing. It sounds like diet culture. It sounds like all the kinds of things around us that we're being told we should be able to do with food. This idea of eating less is always better comes at a price. Several months back, when I did a couple of posts about these medications, I received a number of messages from people who were saying, telling me their experiences on them. And a lot of people were telling me the horror stories about how everything was worse since trying these GLP-1s. But there were a number of people who said, these medications have changed my life for the better, and I finally feel free. Now, the people who were saying this were people who were still on the medications, many of which were saying, I think I'm going to be on this medication for life. So the challenge, of course, is coming off the medications. Because if your eating has been so out of control when you haven't been taking these medications, when you take the medications and now everything feels in control, it's only the medication holding that in control. Of course, the prescribing model would be, well, you just need to develop good habits. You just need to be educated about what healthy eating looks like. But for most of the people that I work with, they are not ignorant about what healthy eating looks like. And if you have ever done any extreme dieting, or not even necessarily extreme, you know what that backlash can be like. So somebody wrote to me at this time and they said that they went on these medications, they lost 60 pounds, and then they came off the medications and their eating was out of control. So when they tried to go back on the medication, for whatever reason, for this person, the medication just didn't work anymore. They gained that 60 pounds back plus another 95 on top of that. Now that is an extreme example, but what I have yet to see, and if this is you, please let me know. If you know anybody who's had this experience, let me know. I have yet to see someone who has this problem of bouts of out of control eating, who's gone on this medication, stopped the out of control eating, maybe lost some weight, come off the medication and stayed in this place of recovery. I haven't come across that yet. Not to say it's not possible, not to say that no one could do it, but it's not a story I've heard. Now, I know when I was struggling with food, the most distressing part about it was the weight gain. I was so distressed about the weight that I'd gained. I think I just would have done anything to have got rid of that. And I was very impulsive, so I wasn't very future focused. And so I guess I just want to say, if that's you, like, I get it. I think I would have felt exactly the same had these medications been available back when this was a problem for me. Now, if somebody tries these medications, say you try these medications because you hope that it's going to help with your food struggles and it's going to give you some weight loss and make you feel better. If you were to try them and then you come off them and it just doesn't work and you end up back where you were, it's a little bit like no harm, no foul, like you tried it. But the question I want everybody to consider is, what if this makes your eating issues worse? Now, of course, you can't know that for sure in advance, and you may still feel like you need to or feel desperate, like you have to try, in which case we want to think about trying to mitigate that risk. We don't know a lot about how to mitigate that risk, so I'm just going to share a couple of thoughts. Number one, if you are a black and white thinker, you need to be aware. This is a bit of self-awareness here of your potential for getting carried away by the excitement of weight loss, by the promise of fast weight loss, by feeling like, let's try and get away with eating as little as possible so that I can change my body and fix these problems and start living my life. I know that we want everything to happen quickly, but I think that the faster the weight loss, the more extreme the deficit, potentially the bigger and the worse that the backlash could be. Being able to take it slow and steady and make sure that you are eating enough when you are on these medications, I think would be a crucial part of anybody with a difficult relationship with food going on them. I think you need to be prepared and anticipate that biological kickback. If you come off these medications, your appetite is going to increase. And if your psychology around your appetite and your relationship with food is a difficult one, that is going to create turmoil. So I would actually imagine that for anybody who is thinking, I want to try these medications to be able to just stop the food noise and just reduce these bouts of out of control eating, it may be that you need to be open to the idea that it could be something you take for life. Just like if someone takes medication for ADHD, it's going to help with their symptoms of ADHD. It's not going to quote unquote cure their ADHD. And I think it's probably going to be a similar thing here, which is tricky because many of you will be dealing with insurance companies. We have a National Health Service here in the UK that is only authorising funding for 2 years. So there are costs to consider too. And as well, if you are going to try these medications and you want some support, I am starting up a new therapy group just for people who are taking GLP-1s so that people can learn from one another as well. There is so little information out there about how to look after your psychology when you are on these medications. I will from time to time create videos to share anything that I'm learning about recovering from uncontrolled eating and these GLP-1s. The biggest question I'm sitting with is who might they help versus who might they harm. I want to try and wrap my head around that, and I don't even know if that is a question that is possible to answer in advance before people have tried these medications, which then invariably turns everybody into guinea pigs. But if you're interested in my group and we're connecting with other people who struggle with this problem, who are also trying GLP-1s, I'll pop a link below and you can have a look at the details there. I also just want to comment that even hearing me talking about these medications could feel quite triggering. Some of you might feel under pressure from family members or doctors to go on these medications. And this is so individual and personal, and there are so many unknowns. Because what I really don't want is for loads of people to just end up so much worse off because of these medications. And I can sit here and say, I don't know, I have concerns, and I'm extremely cautious, and I'm not pushing them, and this is not me endorsing them in any way whatsoever, but it's me trying to understand something that is everywhere now. If you've had any experiences on these medications and you want to share your experiences, and drop me a message via my website or leave a comment below. I'm just trying to gather and understand the experiences of people who are taking these medications if they have a very difficult relationship with food, which isn't everybody who's taking them either. Anyway, enough rambling from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.